I supported my girlfriend through medical school, and now she says I'm not on her level. I met Melissa when I was 20, back when I thought love meant sacrifice. That when you cared about someone, you gave them everything. No hesitation, no conditions. And that's exactly what I did. She was ambitious, driven, and so sure of what she wanted in life. Melissa was going to be a doctor. I, on the other hand, wasn't sure where my life was headed. I was working 2 jobs, one as a delivery driver during the day, another as a bartender at night, trying to save up for school, though I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to study. Maybe business, maybe something in tech. Nothing set in stone. But Melissa, she had a plan, and I fell in love with her certainty, her passion. She was my whole world. Melissa got into med school, and that's when the real struggle began. The cost of tuition, rent, food, textbooks, it was too much for her to handle alone. She tried working part-time in the beginning, but between exams, clinical rotations, and endless hours of studying, it became impossible. She was burning out, barely sleeping, and I couldn't stand watching her struggle. So I made a choice. I told her to quit her job and focus entirely on school. I'd take care of everything else. Rent? Covered. Groceries? No problem. Bills, car payments, unexpected expenses. I worked my ass off to make sure she never had to stress about anything but her studies. I picked up extra shifts at the bar, started doing side gigs, moving furniture, fixing things, even signing up for app-based delivery services just to make a few extra bucks. I was running on fumes most days, barely getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep, but I convinced myself it was worth it. Melissa was going to be a doctor, and when she finally made it, we'd have a good life. At least, that's what I told myself. Those years were brutal. There were nights I came home so exhausted that I collapsed on the couch instead of making it to bed. Mornings where I had to drink half a pot of coffee just to get through my shift. But no matter how drained I felt, I still made sure Melissa had everything she needed. When she had exams, I'd stay up with her, testing her on medical terms, even though half of it made no sense to me. I'd bring her food when she forgot to eat, rub her back when she was too stressed to relax, drive her to early morning rotations when she was too tired to function. I did everything I could to support her, and she appreciated it. At least in the beginning, she'd hug me after a long day and tell me she couldn't have done it without me. She'd call me her rock, her biggest supporter, the one person who never let her down. I held on to those words like they were gospel, like they meant we were building something real, something lasting. I ignored the little things, the way she started talking about her classmates differently, mentioning how driven and intelligent they were, how they understood the pressures of med school in a way I never could. I ignored how our conversations shifted, how she talked less about our future together and more about her future as a doctor. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that things would get better once she graduated. I was wrong. Melissa's graduation was supposed to be a celebration, the moment we had both worked so hard for. I pictured us standing together, her in her cap and gown, me beaming with pride. I imagined taking her out to a fancy dinner, raising a glass to all those sleepless nights, all the sacrifices. But when the day finally came, I barely recognized the woman standing in front of me. Melissa had changed. It wasn't just the way she carried herself, more confident, more self-assured, but the way she looked at me. Like I was something familiar, something from a past life, something she was growing out of. Her graduation party was filled with doctors, residents, and med school classmates, all talking about their next steps. Some were moving for residencies, others had job offers lined up at prestigious hospitals. They spoke in a language I didn't fully understand, medical jargon and career plans, casual mentions of 6-figure salaries and competitive placements. I stood there, smiling like I belonged, but deep down I knew I didn't. Melissa hardly paid me any attention that night. She was too busy mingling, laughing, exchanging stories with her colleagues. When she did talk to me, it felt forced, like she was humoring me. At one point, one of her classmates, a guy named David, asked me what I did for a living. I told him the truth, that I worked 2 jobs to support Melissa while she was in med school. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Damn, man," he said, shaking his head. "That's dedication." I knew what he really meant. It was the same look I had seen on Melissa's face lately. Pity. That night, as we drove home, I felt the distance between us more than ever. I tried to brush it off, to tell myself I was overthinking things. But then, a few nights later, she confirmed what I had feared all along. We were sitting on the couch, Melissa scrolling through her phone, barely engaging in conversation. I had asked her about our future, about what was next for us now that she was officially a doctor. She hesitated. "I don't know," she said finally. "What do you mean, you don't know?" I asked. "We talked about this, Melissa. You're a doctor now. Things are supposed to get better." She sighed. Putting her phone down like this was a conversation she had been dreading. "Look, you've been amazing, but things are different now," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Different how?" I asked. She hesitated again, then finally said it. "You and I were in different places. I'm about to start my residency. My life is going to be completely different, and I don't know if this is going to work anymore." I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Melissa," I said, "I've spent years busting my ass to support you. Everything I did for you. For us. And I'm grateful. But I need someone who understands my world. Someone who gets what it's like to be in this field, to have this kind of career." She said softly. There was the truth. I wasn't on her level anymore. I was just the guy who got her through med school. The guy who paid the bills while she chased her dreams. And now that she had made it, she didn't need me anymore. I felt sick. Used. "So that's it?" I asked. "You're just done?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. A week later, she was gone. She moved out, took what little she had in the apartment, and left me in the home I had worked so hard to provide for her. Just like that, I became an afterthought, a chapter she had closed. And within a few months, I found out why. Melissa had moved on, not just with anyone, but with another doctor. Someone who fit into her new world. Someone who didn't remind her of the past she was so eager to leave behind. I had spent years sacrificing everything for her, only to be tossed aside like I was nothing. And yet, as much as I hated her for it, I wasn't prepared for what would happen next. Because life has a funny way of coming full circle. I wish I could say I moved on quickly, that I picked up the pieces, found my own path, and left Melissa in the past where she belonged. But the truth is I was wrecked. I had built my entire life around her. Every extra shift, every late-night hustle, every sacrifice. It was all for a future that no longer existed. And now, I was standing in the ruins of a relationship I had poured everything into, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. The first few months were the hardest. The apartment felt empty, too quiet. I kept expecting to hear Melissa's voice from the other room, to see her textbooks spread across the kitchen table, to feel her curled up against me at night. But she was gone, and all I had left were the ghosts of the life we were supposed to have. I tried to bury myself in work, but it wasn't the same. The motivation that had kept me going, the purpose was gone. I had saved up a decent amount of money over the years, thinking we'd use it for a house, for a future together. Now I just sat staring at my bank account, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do with it. And then, as if the universe hadn't humiliated me enough, I found out about him. Her new boyfriend. I saw a picture of them together on social media. Melissa in an expensive dress, smiling up at him like he hung the damn moon. He was everything I wasn't. A rising star in the medical field. Wealthy. Connected. Someone who, in her words, understood her world. That should have been my wake-up call. That should have been the moment I let her go. But I wasn't ready. One night, after way too many drinks, I sent her a message. I don't even remember what I said. Something pathetic. Something desperate. I just wanted to understand, why wasn't I enough? She didn't reply, but she did block me. That was it. That was the moment I knew. I had wasted years of my life on a woman who never truly saw me as an equal, who had used me as a stepping stone, a financial crutch, until she could stand on her own. And now, she was soaring while I was left drowning. I spent the next year rebuilding. It wasn't easy. I quit one of my jobs, finally allowing myself to breathe. I started working out again, eating better, sleeping more. I took the money I had saved for our future and invested in myself. I went back to school, taking night classes in business management while still bartending. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Like I wasn't just Melissa's boyfriend or the guy who had been left behind. I was someone with his own goals, his own purpose. And just when I thought I had finally left her in the past, she came crawling back. It started with a message. "Melissa, hey, can we talk?" I stared at my phone for a long time, not sure if I was hallucinating. I hadn't heard from her in over a year. The last time we had spoken, she had left me behind like I was nothing. Now, out of nowhere, She wanted to talk. I ignored the message. 2 days later, she showed up at my door. I opened it, and there she was, the woman who had shattered me. She didn't look like the confident, successful doctor I had seen in those pictures. She looked tired. Her hair was messy, her eyes puffy like she hadn't slept in days. I asked, "What do you want, Melissa?" She said, "I made a mistake." But I stayed quiet, waiting for her to continue. She took a deep breath. "He cheated on me with a nurse. I found out a few weeks ago, and..." She broke off, her voice cracking. "He left, just like that. Said he didn't want to be tied down anymore." I watched as she wiped at her eyes, waiting for some kind of sympathy. I had none to give. "So?" I asked. She hesitated, looking up at me with those same eyes that used to make me melt. "I've been thinking about us, about how good we had it, about how much you loved me." "You mean about how much I sacrificed for you?" I said. Melissa flinched. "I never meant to hurt you." I let out a humorless laugh. "That's the thing, Melissa. You didn't just hurt me. You used me. And the second you didn't need me anymore, you threw me away." "I was stupid," she whispered. "I see that now. I was so focused on my career, on finding someone who understood my world, that I didn't see what I already had." I stared at her, at the woman I had once loved more than anything. Once, I would have given anything to hear her say those words. Now, it was too late. Melissa reached out, her fingers brushing my arm. "Please, can we just talk? I miss you." I pulled back. "You miss what I did for you." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I miss you." For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the woman who had taken so much from me. The woman who had left me at my lowest, only to come crawling back when her life had fallen apart. I took a deep breath, and then I shut the door in her face. I didn't need her anymore. I thought that was the last I'd hear from Melissa. That closing the door in her face was the final chapter in our story. But she wasn't done yet. At first, she tried playing the nostalgia card. A few days after showing up at my door, she sent me a long message. "Melissa, I keep thinking about us, about everything we've been through. I know I messed up. I miss you. I miss what we had. Can we talk?" A week later, she tried again. "Melissa, hey, I understand if you don't want to see me, but I just want to explain myself. Please." This time, I didn't even bother reading the whole thing. But then, she got desperate. One night, she showed up at my apartment again. This time, looking even worse than before. Dark circles under her eyes, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled. She was falling apart. And for the first time, I saw it. Melissa wasn't just here because she missed me. She was here because she needed me. I folded my arms. "Melissa, what the hell are you doing here?" She hesitated, then blurted it out. "I lost my job." That caught me off guard. Melissa had always been so put together, so sure of herself. I never imagined her failing at anything. "What do you mean?" I asked, skeptical. She explained that she couldn't currently work as a doctor because she had a breakdown during her residency. The intense pressure, long hours, and high expectations overwhelmed her, leading to mistakes. One of her supervisors reported her, which resulted in probation. Eventually, she decided to quit. I didn't say anything. I just watched her, waiting for what I already knew was coming. She swallowed. "My savings are almost gone." There it was. She wasn't here because she loved me. She was here because she was drowning, and she thought I was still the same guy who would pull her out. I said, "So let me get this straight. You left me because I wasn't on your level. And now that you've lost everything, you suddenly remember how much you loved me." Her face crumpled. "It's not like that, isn't it?" I shot back. "Melissa, I begged you to see me, to see what I was doing for us. You looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't enough. And now, because you lost your job and your boyfriend, I'm suddenly enough again." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I made a mistake." "No," I said. "You made a choice." She moved closer, extending her hand toward me, desperation in her eyes. Her voice trembled as she pleaded for a chance, insisting it wasn't about money. It was something deeper. She needed me. I laughed bitterly. "You don't need me. You need someone to fix your mess." She let out a shaky breath, her lower lip trembling. "Please," she whispered. For a moment, I just looked at her, the woman I had once loved more than anything, the woman I had sacrificed everything for, and I felt nothing. Just pity. Goodbye, Melissa, I said, and I closed the door. I stood there for a while after I closed the door, my hand still resting on the knob. Part of me expected Melissa to knock again, to beg, to try and push her way back in. But she didn't. She just stood outside for a moment, sniffling, probably waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, she finally left. I watched from the window as she walked, her shoulders slumped in defeat. And for the first time since she walked out of my life, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not regret, just relief. Melissa had been my entire world for years. I had lived for her, worked for her, sacrificed for her. And in the end, none of it had mattered. The moment she had outgrown me, she moved on without hesitation. I had spent so much time wondering what was wrong with me, why I wasn't good enough, why she had needed someone on her level. But now, as I watched her drive away, I realized something. She wasn't on my level. She was never capable of the kind of love I had given her. She had taken and taken until there was nothing left, then discarded me the moment I no longer served her purpose. And now that her new life had crumbled, she wanted to crawl back to the safety of the man who had once put her above everything. But I wasn't that man anymore. Over the next few weeks, I felt a kind of lightness I hadn't experienced in years. No more waiting for closure. No more wondering if she regretted leaving me. I had my answer. She did regret it, but that didn't mean I had to take her back. Instead, I focused on myself. I finished my business courses, finally getting my certificate. I used the money I had once put aside for our future to start my own small business. Something I had always dreamed of doing, but never did because I was too busy supporting someone else's dreams. It wasn't easy, but I loved it. For the first time, I was doing something for myself. I started dating again, too, slowly, cautiously. It took time to shake off the insecurities Melissa had left me with. I kept hearing her words about how she needed someone who understood her world, about how I wasn't on her level. But the truth was I had always been enough. She just hadn't been capable of seeing it. Melissa reached out once more, months later. A long message filled with apologies, nostalgia, and a pathetic attempt to suggest we catch up. I didn't reply. I just blocked her.